There comes a moment when the things that once seemed so important suddenly lose their weight. The competitions, the need to accumulate, the constant hunger for recognition, they no longer give you the joy they used to. Instead, you begin to feel like a quiet witness to your own life, as though you are watching the story unfold, rather than being trapped inside it. And my friend, this is not a loss. This is not emptiness. This is an invitation to awaken into what I call quantum consciousness, that deeper awareness where you realize you are not just a character in the play, but the very awareness observing the play itself. At first, it can feel strange, almost unsettling, like walking into your own living room and realizing the furniture has been rearranged overnight. The conversations around you may sound the same. Your daily routines might look unchanged. Yet something inside has shifted. The labels you carried, the roles you played, the identities you wore so tightly, they begin to feel like old costumes that no longer fit. You sense a quiet pull to let them go, like trees in autumn releasing leaves they no longer need. This is the first sign of transformation. You are not withdrawing from life. You are stepping into a wider field of it. It is the difference between standing in the middle of a storm and suddenly realizing you are the sky vast, is spacious, untouched by the passing clouds. That awareness, that silent witness within you, is your truest self. And the more you allow it to guide you, the more you see that your essence has never been the roles you've played, but the presence behind them. As this unfolds, life begins to speak to you in new ways. You may notice small synchronicities, little alignments that once you would have brushed off as coincidence, a call from a friend just when you were thinking of them, a phrase in a book that answers a question you never spoke aloud. Even your sense of time may change, some days stretching like an endless horizon, others collapsing into moments that vanish like a single breath. These are not tricks of the mind. They are whispers of a deeper reality making itself known to you. And here is the gentle paradox. While your outer circumstances may look the same, your home, your job, your relationships, the world begins to feel utterly different. Because you are different. You are no longer reacting from the conditioned self, the one built by society, family, and fear. You are beginning to respond from a truer place, a self that remembers it is part of something vast and eternal. When this shift happens, control starts to lose its grip on you. You realize that forcing outcomes is like trying to push a river upstream. You can exhaust yourself, or you can release and let the current carry you exactly where you need to go. Life, when seen from this expanded awareness, is not something happening to you, but through you. You are not the echo of your past. You are the vibration of your future, emanating right now in this moment. This doesn't mean challenges disappear. It doesn't mean you stop feeling anger, sadness, or fear. But it does mean you begin to meet these emotions differently. Instead of wrestling with them, you witness them. Fear becomes a messenger, showing you where you have yet to trust. Anger becomes a compass, pointing to boundaries you haven't honored. Sadness becomes a doorway into compassion, both for yourself and for others. These emotions no longer define you. They remind you of the depth of your humanity. And in meeting them with awareness, they transform into fuel for your growth. Quantum consciousness reveals a simple but radical truth. You are not merely a product of creation. You are creation itself, becoming aware of its own nature. And when you live from that knowing, life stops being about chasing, fixing, or proving. It becomes about aligning, allowing, and remembering, like a bird that doesn't study how to fly, but simply spreads its wings. You discover that your true nature carries you effortlessly when you trust it. So if you have felt lately that the old games no longer satisfy you, that the masks no longer fit, take heart. You are not losing yourself. You are finding the self that was always there. You are not falling apart. You are falling open. This is the quiet revolution of consciousness. and it does not demand perfection. It simply asks for presence, again and again. And in that presence, you will see it clearly. You are not just the observer of life. You are the very field of life itself, vast, unshakable, endlessly creative. 1. The shift into a new energy dimension. There comes a point in awakening when you begin to sense something extraordinary. It's not loud, not dramatic. It's quiet, like a whisper that rises above the noise of your everyday life. You begin to realize that your body, this form you've carried for decades, with all its aches, its joys, its stories, is not the container of your awareness. Instead, your body exists within your awareness, and not just your body, but the entire universe. Think about that for a moment. Most of us are taught from childhood that our consciousness lives inside the brain, locked away behind the skull. But what happens when you notice that awareness is not trapped there at all? You start to sense that the air around you, the trees outside your window, even the stars above your head, are all unfolding inside the vast field of your awareness. You are not in the universe. The universe is in you. At first, this realization can feel almost disorienting, as if the ground you've always walked on suddenly shifts beneath your feet. But if you breathe into it, if you allow it, something remarkable unfolds. You no longer feel small, fragile, or at the mercy of circumstances. Instead, you feel spacious, like the sky itself, unshaken by the passing storms of thought and emotion. I remember a time in my own life when everything felt heavy. Responsibilities, expectations, the endless need to prove myself at all weighed on my shoulders. I thought the only way to survive was to push harder, to control more, to keep my grip tight on the wheel of life. But the tighter I held, the more exhausted I became. It was only when I loosened my grip, when I allowed myself to rest, that I discovered something waiting in the stillness, a sense of presence that had been there all along. That presence was not bound by my body. It was the space in which my body and my entire life were unfolding. This shift into a new energy dimension is not about escaping the world. It's about seeing the world differently. Imagine a fish that suddenly realizes water has always surrounded it, not something it must search for, not something it can lose. In the same way, consciousness is not something you need to chase. It is the field in which your existence takes place. Whether you're aware of it or not, the difference awakening makes is that you finally notice it. When this shift begins, even the smallest experiences take on new meaning. A simple walk in the park feels alive with presence. The sound of a bird, the rustle of leaves, the warmth of the sun on your face, they don't just happen to you. They happen within you. Life no longer feels like something out there pressing in on you. It feels like a symphony unfolding in the very space of your being. And here's the gentle beauty of it: when you live from this expanded awareness, fear begins to lose its hold. Why? Because fear is rooted in the idea of separation, me against the world, me against time, me against circumstance. But when you know that everything is already arising within you, the sense of separation softens. You start to see yourself not as a drop isolated in the ocean, but as the ocean itself taking form as a drop. This doesn't mean the challenges of life vanish. Bills still need to be paid. Relationships still require care. Bodies still age. But how you move through these experiences changes. You no longer carry them as a burden pressing down on your chest. You carry them as waves moving through the sea of your awareness. Some waves are rough, some are gentle, but none of them diminish the ocean. As you embody this shift, a deep calm emerges. You realize that peace is not something the world can give you, nor something it can take away. Peace is the natural fragrance of your own awareness. It has always been there, beneath the noise, waiting for you to notice. And the more you notice, the more it guides you. Decisions become less about logic and control, and more about resonance, about what feels aligned. what feels coherent with the deeper rhythm of your being. This is what it means to step into a new energy dimension. Not a mystical escape, not a fantasy, but a lived reality where your identity expands beyond the skin and the story, where you remember that you are not confined to the body, but that the body itself is a guest in the vast, eternal home of your consciousness. And in that remembrance, something beautiful happens. Life no longer feels like something to survive. It feels like something to embrace, to dance with, to allow. You become less concerned with controlling every outcome and more attuned to the gentle art of participation, of letting life move through you, as you, with grace. 2. Recognizing the ego and the dissolution of old roles. There comes a time when the names we've carried, the titles we've worn, the memories we've clung to, begin to feel heavy, almost like clothing that no longer fits. The ego, with all its layers of identity, is like a costume closet. Over the years, we've dressed ourselves in the outfits handed down by family, culture, expectations, and survival. And for a while, those costumes served us. They gave us a sense of belonging, a sense of order in a chaotic world. But as awareness expands, something changes. You start to notice that those roles, the achiever, the caretaker, the strong one, the victim, the successful professional, the good son or daughter, they don't feel alive anymore. They feel scripted, rehearsed, like a play you've been performing for years. But the audience has left, and you're still on stage repeating the lines out of habit. When I first began to sense this, it was disorienting. I felt like I was losing myself. The person I thought I was, the identity I had worked so hard to maintain, began to crumble. And for a while, I resisted. I clung to the old costumes, convinced that without them, I would be nothing. But here's the truth. I eventually discovered the crumbling was not the end. It was the beginning. The ego is not an enemy. It is not something to destroy. It's more like an old pair of shoes that carried you across rough ground. It protected you, shaped you, and helped you survive. But when the road changes, when the terrain becomes different, those shoes become too small, too tight. The pain you feel is not a punishment. It's a signal that it's time to take them off. As this dissolution happens, you may feel sadness, and that sadness is natural. It feels like mourning, because in many ways, it is. You are grieving the person you once thought you were. The job title, the social mask, the fixed ideas of me that defined your sense of worth. But beneath the grief lies an incredible freedom, because when you take off those costumes, what remains is not emptiness. What remains is space open, vast, alive with possibility. I've spoken to many who are going through this, and they often ask, if I am not my roles, if I am not my story, then who am I? And I always smile gently, because I know that the question itself is the doorway. The ego thrives on definition. It wants to be something specific, something concrete. But the true self, the awareness behind it all, doesn't need to be pinned down. It is fluid, like water. It takes the shape of whatever container it moves through, but it is never limited to the container. In daily life, this dissolution may look simple. One day, you realize that arguments don't interest you anymore. You no longer feel the need to prove yourself right. Another day, you notice that the compliments or criticisms of others don't stir you the way they once did. Or perhaps you catch yourself before stepping into an old pattern, defending, pleasing, controlling, and instead, you pause, breathe, and simply observe. Each of these moments is like a thread of the costume coming loose. And then, there comes a day when you see it clearly. You are not the costume. You never were. You are the space in which all costumes are worn and taken off. You are the stage on which all roles are played. But you are not confined to the play. This recognition doesn't make you cold or detached. Quite the opposite. It makes you more tender, more compassionate. Because when you no longer cling to your own roles, you stop clinging to the roles others play as well. You can see beyond their masks, beyond their defenses, and meet them in their humanity. You no longer need them to validate you, nor do you need to fix or control them. You can simply be with them, as presence, meeting presence. The dissolution of ego is not a dramatic collapse, though it can sometimes feel like one. More often, it is a gentle unraveling, a loosening of the tight grip you once had on your identity, and as it unravels, you find yourself lighter, freer, more able to move with the flow of life rather than against it. So, if you are in a season where the old labels feel hollow, where your roles no longer inspire you, take heart. You are not disappearing. You are appearing. You are not losing yourself. You are losing the mask. And behind that mask is a presence so steady, so vast, so quietly powerful, that it cannot be shaken. That is the gift of recognizing the ego and letting the old roles dissolve. It is the discovery that what you are is not a fragile identity, but the timeless awareness in which all identities come and go. 3. The power of presence. There is a quiet strength that comes when you stop chasing the future and stop wrestling with the past. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks or grand gestures. It arrives softly, like the way dawn touches the horizon, subtle, but undeniable. That strength is the power of presence. Most of us spend years living anywhere but here. Our minds run ahead into tomorrow, rehearsing worries and what-ifs, or they fall backward into yesterday, replaying old mistakes, regrets, or the what could have been. And while the body stands firmly in the now, the heart and mind are scattered across time. It's no wonder so many of us feel tired, restless, or incomplete. We are rarely home in ourselves. But then comes a moment, sometimes born out of exhaustion, sometimes out of grace, when you finally pause. You take a breath, you feel it fill your lungs, and you notice something you've overlooked. 1,000 times the present moment is whole, right here, without anything added, nothing taken away. There is a stillness, and in that stillness, you are not lacking, you are not behind, you are not broken, you are simply here. When I first began to touch this stillness, it frightened me. It felt too empty, too quiet, as if I had stepped out of the rush of life into a room with no furniture. But the longer I stayed, the more I realized this emptiness was not a void. It was spaciousness. It was freedom. It was the silence out of which everything else could arise. Presence is not about ignoring the past or refusing to plan for the future. It's about no longer being enslaved by them. The past has already carved its lessons. The future will arrive in its own time. But the only place you can ever live, breathe, and create is now. This moment is not a stepping stone to something else. It is life itself. Think of presence like soil. If you are scattered between past and future, the soil is dry and cracked, unable to nourish seeds. But when you return to this moment, the soil becomes rich, moist, fertile. It can hold and grow the seeds of your deepest intentions. The creative energy of life only flows into what is grounded in presence. Without it, your efforts are scattered, like trying to plant in the wind. With it, life begins to blossom naturally. I remember once sitting by a river, exhausted from years of striving, always trying to make things happen, to control outcomes, to get somewhere better. As I watched the water move, I realized the river wasn't struggling to flow. It wasn't pushing itself to the sea. It simply moved, moment by moment, curve by curve, finding its way with ease. Presence is like that river. When you rest in it, you stop forcing, and you begin allowing, and in that allowing, creativity emerges with a kind of grace you could never manufacture. What's extraordinary is that presence doesn't just change how you feel inside, it changes how you engage with the world. Conversations become deeper because you are not planning your next reply, you are truly listening. Meals taste richer because you are not rushing through them to get somewhere else. Even ordinary tasks, washing dishes, folding clothes, walking to the mailbox, carry a quiet sacredness when done with awareness. Life slows down, not because the clock moves differently, but because you are finally moving in rhythm with it. This is where true creative power is born, not in the frantic chase to secure a future, not in the endless analysis of the past, but in the simple, unshakable presence of now. From this stillness, inspiration flows like fresh water from a hidden spring. Ideas come not from strain, but from clarity. Solutions arrive not from worry, but from calm. You begin to notice that when you are fully here, life itself becomes cooperative, as if the universe had been waiting for you to arrive in this moment before offering its gifts. Presence is also where healing begins. Trauma lives in the past. Anxiety lives in the future. But peace lives only in now. When you rest in presence, your nervous system resets. Your breath deepens. Your heart rhythm steadies. It is as though your whole being sighs in relief, whispering, "Finally, you are home." So, if you find yourself weary from chasing or tangled in memories, let this be your invitation. Pause. Place your attention gently on the breath moving in and out. Notice the sounds around you. Feel the ground beneath your feet. You don't need to add anything, fix anything, or achieve anything in this moment. Just arrive. Just be. And in that arrival, you will discover that presence is not weak or passive. It is the greatest strength you could ever embody, because when you live in presence, you are aligned with the very source of life itself. And from there, creativity, love, and clarity are not things you need to fight for. They flow through you as naturally as sunlight through an open window. 4. Awakening from social conditioning. There comes a point on the path of awareness when you begin to notice something unsettling, almost shocking. In its simplicity, much of what you thought was you was never truly yours. The beliefs you held so tightly, the habits you repeated without question, the emotions that seemed to arise automatically. They were not born from your essence. They were programmed into you. From the moment we arrive in this world, we are taught how to see ourselves and how to behave. Parents, teachers, peers, culture, media, all of them contribute to the script. This is who you are. This is how you should act. This is what success means. This is what failure means. Slowly, almost invisibly, these voices become your own. You internalize them until you can no longer tell the difference between your truth and the programming of society. I remember looking back on my younger years and realizing how much of my life had been lived on autopilot. I chased achievements not because they filled me with joy, but because I believed that without them, I would not be worthy. I played roles in relationships, saying what was expected, doing what was acceptable, all the while ignoring the quiet voice inside that longed for something different. And the emotions, the anger, the fear, the shame, they weren't random storms. They were the echoes of conditioning, telling me to stay in line, to be safe, to avoid rocking the boat. But awakening cracks that shell. You start to see your own mind at work, almost as if you were watching it on a screen. You notice the thoughts rising. I should be further ahead by now. They won't like me if I say this. I always mess things up. And instead of obeying them, you pose. You realize these thoughts are not commands. They are habits. They are echoes. They are not who I am. This realization is both liberating and terrifying. Liberating, because suddenly you are not a prisoner of every thought that runs through your head. Terrifying, Because if those thoughts aren't truly yours, then who are you? What remains when you set them down? At first, you may feel naked, exposed, as though the scaffolding that held up your life is being dismantled. But slowly, something deeper begins to rise. You discover that beneath the programming there is a self that is unconditioned, untouched, and profoundly alive. This self does not live by should or must. It doesn't measure itself against the standards of society. It simply is. And from that being flows a natural rhythm, actions that feel authentic, words that feel true, choices that align not with fear, but with freedom. To awaken from social conditioning is like walking out of a crowded marketplace where everyone is shouting at once, trying to sell you their version of life. At first, the silence feels strange. Your ears ring with the absence of noise. But then you begin to breathe. You begin to hear the sound of your own heart, the quiet guidance of your intuition, and you realize how much of your life you've spent buying stories that were never written for you. This doesn't mean you reject society or withdraw from life. It means you engage with it differently. You no longer chase validation from others because you know your worth doesn't depend on approval. You no longer exhaust yourself trying to meet standards that never felt right in the first place. You begin to stand in your own rhythm, even when it doesn't match the beat of the crowd. And paradoxically, this makes you more connected, not less. Because authenticity always creates deeper connection than conformity ever could. The old programming may still arise. The voices may still whisper, but the difference now is that you recognize them. You watch them without being driven by them. Like clouds passing through the sky, they appear and dissolve. But the vast awareness, your sky, remains unchanged. That recognition is freedom. So if you find yourself questioning the rules you've always lived by, if you feel disillusioned with the old definitions of success or identity, know this: you are not failing. You are waking up. You are peeling back the layers of programming to uncover the self that has always been here, patiently waiting. And in that awakening, life begins to feel less like a performance and more like a homecoming. You stop living as a reflection of other people's expectations and start living as the expression of your own truth. That is the beauty of awakening from social conditioning. It is the discovery that you are not the script you were handed. You are the awareness that can put the script down and choose to live, moment by moment, from the deepest truth of who you are. 5. Healing across time. One of the most mysterious, yet deeply practical discoveries on the path of awakening is this: the past is not fixed. We grow up believing that what has happened cannot be changed, that our only choice is to live with it, to endure the scars it left behind. But when your awareness expands, you begin to realize that memory is not just a mental archive. It is a living energy, carried not only in your mind, but in your body, in your nervous system, even in the expression of your DNA. And because it is alive, it can be transformed. For many years, I carried the weight of old wounds, the unkind words spoken long ago, the disappointments I never voiced, the grief I tried to bury. They seemed like shadows permanently etched into who I was. Sometimes, without warning, a memory would surface, and I'd feel the same sting as though it had happened yesterday. I thought healing meant ignoring it, numbing it, or pretending it no longer mattered. But ignoring a wound does not heal it. It simply drives it deeper into the body, where it waits, quietly shaping how you breathe, how you react, how you live. The turning point came when I stopped running. Instead of pushing the past away, I turned toward it with presence. At first, it was painful, like reopening an old scar. But then, something shifted. I looked at those younger versions of myself not with judgment, but with compassion. I placed a hand on my heart and whispered, "You did the best you could with what you knew at the time, and I love you for it." In that moment, something softened. The memory did not vanish. But the charge it carried, the tight grip it had on me, began to dissolve. This is what it means to heal across time. When you bring love and acceptance to your past, you are not just comforting an old story. You are altering the energetic imprint it left behind. Science is beginning to catch up with what mystics have always known. Through the study of epigenetics, we now understand that our emotional environment can literally change the way our genes express themselves. Stress, trauma, and fear imprint, not just in the mind, but in the very code of our biology. And love, presence, and compassion can recode that pattern, opening pathways for health, vitality, and resilience. In practical terms, this means you can sit quietly today, remember a moment of pain from decades ago, and by holding it with love, you begin to transform not only your emotional relationship to it, but the very way your body carries it. What once felt like a chain around your chest can begin to loosen. What once showed up as tension in your shoulders or sickness in your gut can slowly release. You are not just healing your mind, you are healing your whole being. I often think of it like tending a garden. Imagine a seed planted years ago, perhaps planted by fear, or shame, or grief. It grew into a thorny plant that has taken root in the soil of your body. Every time you brush against it, you feel the sting. Healing across time is like kneeling down in that garden, finally seeing the plant clearly, and deciding to nurture the soil with love instead of neglect. Slowly, the thorns begin to soften. Slowly, something new can grow in its place. And here's the beauty. This healing does not just ripple backward into your past. It ripples outward into your present and your future. When you heal an old wound, you free yourself from repeating its pattern. You stop carrying it unconsciously into new relationships, new choices, new generations. In a very real way, when you heal across time, you are not only healing yourself, you are healing your lineage, breaking cycles that might otherwise continue. Some people ask, but how can I change what has already happened? The answer is, you cannot change the event, but you can change the meaning, the energy, the imprint it left within you. The past is written, yes, but the story you carry about it, the story that shapes your body, your mind, your choices, that story can be rewritten through love. So if you carry memories that ache, if there are chapters of your life you wish could have been different, know this healing is still possible. Sit with those memories, not as an enemy, but as a teacher. Offer them the compassion that was missing at the time. Speak to the younger self within you as you would to a child, with tenderness, with patience, with forgiveness, and as you do, you will feel something remarkable. The past loosening its grip, your body breathing easier, your spirit standing taller. Healing across time does not erase what happened. It reveals that even in your deepest wounds, there is a doorway to freedom. And when you step through, you discover that your past was never meant to imprison you. It was meant to lead you here to this moment of remembering your own power to love, to transform, to begin again. 6. Transforming emotions and learning from challenges. For much of my life, I treated emotions like enemies. Fear was something to push away. Anger was something to suppress. Sadness was something to hide. I thought strength meant keeping these feelings out of sight, pretending they had no power over me. But in truth, that resistance gave them even more power. What we bury doesn't disappear. It waits beneath the surface, shaping our choices, our relationships, our health. It took me many years and many painful lessons to realize that emotions are not here to punish us. They are messengers. They are guides. Each one arrives with a signal, pointing us back toward wholeness. Fear says, look here, there's a place where you've forgotten to trust. Angus is, pay attention, your boundary has been crossed, or your truth ignored. Sadness says, Pause. Something needs to be honored, grieved, or released. When you stop fighting these emotions and start listening, you discover they are not obstacles. They are doorways. I remember a season of deep fear in my own life. Every decision felt heavy. I worried constantly about what might go wrong. My mind spun stories of failure and loss, and I believed them all. But one day, instead of running from the fear, I sat quietly and let it rise. My body trembled. My breath grew shallow, but I stayed with it. And slowly, beneath the trembling, I heard the message, "You are afraid because you do not trust life to hold you." It was painful to admit, but it was true. And in seeing that truth, something softened. Fear had done its job. It had shown me where I was still living from control rather than surrender. The same was true with anger. For years, I saw anger only as destruction. When it flared up in me, I felt ashamed. I thought it meant I was failing at being calm, failing at being spiritual. But over time, I learned to see anger differently. Anger is fire. Left unchecked, it burns. But when honored, it illuminates. It points to places where I have betrayed myself, where I've said yes when my heart wanted to say no. By listening to anger without acting it out recklessly, I began to find clarity. I began to reclaim my voice. And sadness, perhaps the heaviest of all, it can feel like a stone in the chest, a weight that makes even breathing hard. For a long time, I believed sadness meant weakness. But when I finally allowed myself to grieve, to weep, to let the tears fall, I discovered something unexpected. Sadness cleanses. It washes away the residue of what has been lost, making space for new life to enter. Without sadness, there is no depth to joy. They are two halves of the same river. This is the alchemy of awakening, learning to meet emotions not with resistance, but with presence, to let fear, anger, and sadness speak their messages, and then to let them pass like weather across the sky. You are not the storm. You are the sky itself, vast and unbroken. The storm matters because it nourishes the ground and clears the air, but it does not define you. When you begin to live this way, challenges transform too. Life will always bring difficulties, illness, loss, disappointments, changes we did not ask for. But instead of seeing these moments as proof that life is against you, you begin to see them as invitations. H. Challenge asks, where are you still clinging? Where are you still forgetting your wholeness? The pain is real, but it is not random. It is a teacher. Looking back, the darkest seasons of my life were also the ones that revealed the deepest truths. The failures that humbled me taught me compassion. The betrayals that broke me taught me self-respect. The losses that hollowed me out created the space for new beginnings. I would not have chosen those hardships, but I can now see how they shaped me, how they called me home, to myself. To dissolve emotions is not to erase them. It is to allow them to fulfill their purpose and then release them. Fear leads you back to trust. Anger leads you back to boundaries and truth. Sadness leads you back to love. When you see them this way, you stop battling your own humanity. You begin to embrace it. So the next time fear knocks at your door, or anger rises hot in your chest, or sadness weighs heavy on your shoulders, pause. Instead of pushing them away, ask, what are you here to show me? Listen gently. The message will come, and when it does, you will discover that these emotions were never your enemies. They were guides all along, pointing you back to the wholeness you had only forgotten. This is the gift of transforming emotions and learning from challenges. It is the reminder that even in our most difficult moments, life is not trying to break us. It is trying to awaken us. 7. Synchronicity and nonlinear time. There comes a point on this journey where the ordinary sense of time begins to loosen. Days no longer feel as predictable as they once did. Hours can stretch like wide rivers or collapse into single moments. You start noticing coincidences, small, strange alignments that seem to appear out of nowhere. A friend calls at the exact moment you were thinking about them. A book falls open to a sentence that feels like it was written just for you. You arrive somewhere by chance, only to discover it was exactly where you needed to be. At first, these experiences feel uncanny. You wonder if you're imagining them, if your mind is simply seeking patterns where there are none. But as they multiply, as they weave through your days, with quiet precision, something inside you knows. This is not random. This is the texture of a deeper reality, making itself visible. I remember my own first taste of this. I had been sitting with a difficult decision, unsure of which path to take. That evening, while walking through town, a stranger passed me, wearing a shirt with a single word printed on it, the very word I had been wrestling with all day. It stopped me in my tracks. In that instant, I felt not just guided, but accompanied, as if life itself had reached out and said, "I hear you. Keep going." From that day forward, I stopped brushing off coincidences. I began to see them as signposts. Synchronicity is not about controlling the universe or bending it to your will. It is about resonance. When your inner state becomes coherent, when your thoughts, emotions, and intentions align, the world around you begins to mirror that alignment. Life starts responding to you, not because you are forcing it, but because you are attuned to it. The coincidences are not magic tricks. They are reflections, proof that your field and the larger field are in dialogue. And with synchronicity, often comes a shift in your experience of time. The clock may still tick in its usual way, but your relationship to it changes. There are moments when time feels expansive, like a spacious room, where everything slows down, and you have all you need. There are other moments when hours seem to vanish, entire days passing in what feels like minutes. This is not your imagination. It is a sign that your awareness is beginning to move beyond the linear model of time. Modern physics tells us that time is not a single straight line, but a dimension woven into the fabric of space. From the perspective of the quantum field, all moments exist simultaneously. Past, present, and future are not separate compartments, but different aspects of one living whole. When your consciousness begins to resonate with this truth, you start to experience hints of it directly. You might glimpse a future possibility as a feeling or a dream. You might heal an old wound and feel its echo shift instantly in your present life. You might just know when to act or when to wait, without any logical reason. This nonlinear sense of time is not about predicting the future or escaping the present. It's about living so fully in the present that the boundaries between before, now, and after grow thin. In that state, you stop measuring life by clocks and calendars. You begin measuring it by depth, the depth of your presence, the depth of your connection, the depth of your trust. When you live like this, you find yourself moving with life rather than against it. You arrive at the right place at the right time, without needing to plan every detail. Opportunities emerge not because you're chasing them, but because you're aligned with them. Relationships unfold naturally, guided by an unseen intelligence rather than by rigid expectations. Even challenges begin to feel purposeful, arriving not as interruptions, but as initiations into deeper layers of your own becoming. I often tell people, synchronicity is life's way of winking at you. It's a quiet confirmation that you're not alone, that you're connected to something vast, something intelligent, something compassionate. You don't have to believe in anything mystical to experience it. Just notice. Just be present enough to see the threads weaving through your days. Over time, you will begin to trust the pattern, even when you cannot yet see the whole design. And as you trust, a new kind of time emerges, one not ruled by scarcity but by sufficiency. You stop saying, I don't have enough time, and begin to feel, I have exactly the time I need. You stop racing ahead or dragging behind. You begin to inhabit the eternal moment, where life is always unfolding. This is the gift of synchronicity and nonlinear time. It is not an escape from reality. It is reality revealing its deeper layers. It is life inviting you to live in rhythm with the whole, rather than the fragments. And when you accept that invitation, you find yourself guided, not by fear, but by alignment, not by clocks, but by presence, not by coincidence, but by connection. 8. Becoming the flow of creation. There comes a turning point on this path when life no longer feels like something that happens to you. The weight of being a victim of circumstance, the feeling that you are at the mercy of external forces, begins to dissolve. Instead, a new recognition dawns. Life is flowing through you, and from you are not a passive receiver of experience. You are a living channel for creation itself. At first, this realization is subtle. It shows up in small ways: a conversation that unfolds with surprising ease, a piece of music or writing that seems to pour out of you, as though from another place, a moment where your presence alone seems to lift the spirits of those around you. You might even find yourself saying, "I don't know where that came from." And that's the point. It came through you. But it did not start with you. You were the instrument, not the source. I remember once sitting quietly with pen in hand, intending to write down a few thoughts. Before I knew it, pages were filled with words that felt wiser than anything I had planned. Reading them later, I hardly recognized them as mine, and yet they were me. Not the small me bound by habits and stories, but the deeper self that is one with the larger field of life. That is what it feels like to become a flow of creation. You stop straining, and you start allowing. To live this way is like becoming a river. The river doesn't question whether the water will arrive. It doesn't hoard or cling to each drop. It simply moves, guided by gravity, shaped by the land, always carrying forward, always giving of itself, and in that giving, it nourishes everything it touches. When you step into the flow of creation, you become like that river. Ideas, inspiration, love, aphon, healing begin to move through you. You don't hold them tightly. You don't claim them as possessions. You allow them to pass through, knowing they are not meant to be stored but shared. This is not about becoming extraordinary in the eyes of the world. You don't need to be an artist or a poet to live as a channel of creation. It shows up in ordinary ways too. The way you speak to your children, the way you cook a meal, the way you listen deeply to a friend. Each of these moments can be infused with the energy of the universe moving through you. When you are present, when you are open, life expresses itself uniquely through your form, in ways no one else could ever replicate. But here's the quiet paradox: the more you become a channel for creation, the less personal it feels. You begin to see that what is flowing is not your brilliance or your accomplishment. It is the intelligence of life itself, endlessly seeking new expression. And your role is not to control it, but to keep yourself clear enough, open enough, receptive enough, that the current can move through without obstruction. Of course, the ego resists this. The ego wants ownership. It wants to say, "This was mine. I did this." But when you taste the real flow, you see how small that claim is. The ego may write its name on the canvas, but the colors, the light, the inspiration, they belong to the universe. And when you finally release the need to cling, the flow becomes stronger, freer, more radiant. Living this way changes your relationship with effort. You no longer feel the constant pressure to force outcomes, to chase results. Instead, you trust the current. You begin to see that when you align yourself with presence, with love, with authenticity, the right words, the right opportunities, the right people appear at the right time. Creation doesn't need to be squeezed out of you. It simply flows when you step aside. I often think of it like being a flute. The flute does not create the music. It allows breath to pass through it, shaping the sound into melody. Without the openness of the flute, there is no song. Without the breath, the flute is silent. In the same way, when you open yourself, when you release resistance, life breathes through you, and the song of creation emerges. So when life feels heavy, when you catch yourself thinking, everything depends on your effort, pause. Ask yourself, am I trying to push the river, or am I allowing it to carry me? Because the truth is, life is not happening against you. It is happening through you, and when you trust that truth, you discover a freedom beyond anything the ego could offer. Becoming the flow of creation is not about being special. It is about being available. It is about recognizing that you are not just a participant in the universe, you are a vessel of the universe. And in every breath, in every act, you are invited to let the current move through you, shaping the world in ways both simple and profound. 9. The observer as the creator. There is a moment on this path when you realize something both humbling and empowering. You are not only the one watching life, you are also the one shaping it. The observer, the quiet awareness that notices thoughts and feelings passing by, is not passive. It is creative. The way you observe, the energy with which you hold the world in your gaze, has the power to influence what unfolds. For a long time, I thought life was something happening outside me, a sequence of events that I had to endure, control, or survive. I believed I was a passenger in someone else's vehicle, hoping the driver would take me where I wanted to go. But awakening showed me a different picture. It revealed that my awareness was not just the witness of reality, but the very canvas on which reality was painted. Think of it like this: when you hold a camera and choose a certain lens, the entire scene shifts. Through one lens, the world looks sharp, harsh, and unforgiving. Through another, it looks soft, expansive, full of light. The landscape hasn't changed, but the way you see it transforms your experience. In much the same way, the quality of your awareness, whether it is clouded by fear or illuminated by clarity, determines the reality you live within. I remember a period in my life when everything felt like struggle. Each day was a battle to get through. But when I finally stepped back and began to watch my own mind, I noticed something crucial. It wasn't life itself that was heavy. It was my observation of it. I was filtering everything through the lens of scarcity, telling myself stories of failure, disappointment, and lack. The more I observed through that lens, the more evidence life seemed to give me. When I shifted my attention, when I began to observe from a place of possibility, even gratitude, the outer circumstances did not change overnight. But my inner world softened, and slowly, the outer began to mirror the inner. This is why ancient wisdom and modern physics meet at the same truth: observation matters. The mystics said for centuries that consciousness shapes experience. Quantum mechanics now tells us that the very act of observation influences the behavior of particles. Awareness is not a bystander. It is an active participant in creation. What does this mean for daily life? It means that when you look at your circumstances with fear, you amplify fear. When you observe with anger, you stir more anger. But when you observe with presence, with calm, with openness, you invite life to meet you at that level. The field of reality is like a mirror. It reflects not just your actions, but your essence. This doesn't mean you have to deny your feelings or pretend to be positive when you're not. It means you meet your experience consciously, knowing that the way you hold it shapes the way it unfolds. Even in grief, you can observe with tenderness instead of resistance. Even in fear, you can observe with curiosity instead of judgment. And in doing so, you begin to shift the very frequency of your being. Becoming the observer as the creator is like learning to play an instrument you've been carrying all your life. At first, the sounds may be rough, the melodies uncertain, but the more you listen, the more you practice presence, the clearer the song becomes. And that song, your vibration, becomes the soundtrack to the reality you experience. So if you've ever wondered whether your life has meaning, whether your presence truly matters, let this be your reminder. Every observation you make, every way you choose to see, is a brushstroke on the canvas of creation. You are not a powerless spectator. You are the field itself, observing, shaping, becoming. And in this realization, you no longer feel separate from life. You see that you and life are in constant dialogue. You are not asking, "What will happen to me?" You are asking, "What am I choosing to see, to embody, to emanate right now?" That choice is the seed, and reality, faithful as the earth, will grow whatever you plant. 10. Understanding the nature of reality. For most of our lives, we are taught to see the world in a very particular way. We are told that the physical comes first, that matter is the foundation, and that consciousness somehow arises from the brain. As a byproduct, we inherit the belief that the universe is made of solid things, and that awareness is just a fleeting spark, destined to vanish when the body is gone. But as awareness deepens, this picture begins to unravel. You start to notice that everything you know of the world, the sounds, the sights, the textures, even the people you love, appears only within your awareness. Without awareness, there is no experience of them. In fact, without awareness, there is no world for you at all. This realization gently turns the old story upside down. It is not that matter creates consciousness. It is that consciousness is the field in which matter appears. I remember sitting quietly one evening, listening to the sound of rain against the window. At first, I thought, that's rain outside, and I'm here inside. But then something shifted. I realized that the sound of rain was not happening out there. It was happening in me, in the space of my awareness. Without that awareness, the sound did not exist. At least not for me. In that moment, I understood. In a very real way, consciousness is primary. The world arises within it, not the other way around. This is not a denial of the physical world. The table is still solid. The rain is still wet. The body still hungers and tires. But the deeper truth is that all of these experiences are known only through awareness. Awareness is the constant, the background, the silent witness without which nothing can be perceived. Matter comes and goes. Awareness remains. Science itself is beginning to point toward this mystery. Quantum physics shows us that particles do not exist as fixed objects until they are observed. They exist as possibilities, probabilities, a cloud of potential. It is the active observation of awareness that crystallizes them into form, what the mystics whispered thousands of years ago. Physics now begins to confirm consciousness is not a side effect of the universe. It is the foundation of the universe. When you let this truth sink in, something profound shifts in your daily life. You no longer feel like a small figure lost in a vast, indifferent cosmos. Instead, you begin to sense that the cosmos itself is arising within you. The stars, the earth, the people you meet, the moments you live, all of it appears in the vast sky of your awareness. You are not contained in the universe. The universe is contained in you. This realization changes the way you meet everything. When you face difficulty, you see that it is not an immovable wall pressing against you, but an experience arising in awareness. It can be witnessed, met, and allowed to pass. When you feel joy, you savor it more deeply, knowing it too is a gift appearing in this luminous field. Even death, the great mystery, loses some of its sting, because if awareness is not born of matter, then it does not end when matter dissolves. Awareness remains. vast and unbroken, like the sky after the storm. And so you begin to live differently. You no longer cling so tightly to possessions or identities, because you see they are temporary forms. Like waves rising and falling in the ocean, the wave is beautiful, but it is not separate from the ocean. In the same way, your body, your story, your experiences are real and precious, but they are not separate from the infinite field of awareness in which they rise and fall. To understand the nature of reality in this way is not to escape the world, but to enter it more fully. You drink your tea, and it is no longer just tea. It is consciousness tasting itself. You embrace a loved one, and it is no longer just skin touching skin. It is awareness meeting itself in another form. Life becomes intimate, sacred, and astonishingly alive, not because anything has changed on the outside, but because you have awakened to the truth of what has always been. So the next time you look around at your life, pause and notice. Everything you see, hear, touch, and feel is not happening out there. It is happening here, within the boundless field of your awareness. Matter is not the origin of your being. Your being is the origin of matter, and from that recognition flows a peace, a freedom, and a reverence for life that no external circumstance can ever take away. 11. Unity and connection. There comes a moment on this journey when the boundaries that once felt so real begin to dissolve. The idea that you are a separate individual, cut off from others and from the world, slowly gives way to something far more spacious. As quantum consciousness opens, you begin to sense a truth that words can only point to. There is no me and them, no inner and outer, no division at all. There is only one field of awareness, expressing itself through countless forms. At first, this may sound abstract, like a lofty spiritual principle, but when it happens in your direct experience, it is anything but abstract. It is profoundly intimate. You notice it in small, ordinary moments. The way you feel a stranger's pain, as if it were your own, or the way the laughter of a child touches something deep inside you. You realize these connections are not metaphors. They are glimpses of the truth that life is one fabric, woven from a single thread of consciousness. I remember standing under a wide night sky, looking at the stars. For years, I felt small beneath that immensity, like a speck lost in an endless void. But in a quiet moment of awareness, something shifted. I no longer felt like I was looking at the universe. I felt as though the universe was looking at itself through my eyes. The stars were not distant lights scattered across emptiness. They were part of the same field of being that I was. There was no separation, just one vast presence, appearing as both me and the stars. When this realization deepens, compassion becomes natural. You do not have to force yourself to be kind or loving. It flows as effortlessly as breath. Because how could you harm another? When the other is not truly separate from you, their joy is your joy. Their suffering is your suffering. Acts of service no longer feel like duties to be checked off. They feel like the most natural expression of who you are. Loving, serving, healing, these are not things you do. They are what you are. Once the illusion of separation falls away, this unity does not erase individuality. You still have your face, your voice, your story, but you see them differently. They are like waves rising on the surface of the same ocean. Each wave has its own shape, its own rhythm, its own journey toward the shore, yet no wave is separate from the water. The same essence flows through all. To realize this is to rest in a kind of freedom that no circumstance can diminish. And here lies the great paradox when you stop clinging to the small self. You do not disappear. Instead, you expand. Your life becomes less about protecting me and more about serving the whole. And in that service, you find a joy deeper than anything the separate self could ever achieve. The mystics of every tradition have spoken of this. They use different words: oneness, unity, non-duality. But they all pointed to the same truth. Quantum science, in its own way, whispers it too, at the deepest level. Everything is connected. Particles dansent in entanglement. No matter how far apart, the universe behaves not as a collection of separate parts, but as a seamless whole. And within your heart, you already know this. Every time you feel love, empathy, or awe, you are touching the reality of unity. Living from this place changes everything. Conflicts soften, because you no longer need to prove yourself against an other avenue. Gratitude deepens, because every encounter is seen as an encounter with the one consciousness wearing a new face. Even solitude transforms, because you are never truly alone. Wherever you are, life is with you, as you, through you. To realize unity is not to escape the world, but to embrace it fully. You cook a meal, and you know you are feeding the whole. You listen to a friend, and you hear life speaking to itself. You walk under the trees, and you feel their breath moving in your lungs. This is not mystical exaggeration. It is the simple, luminous truth revealed when the walls of separation crumble. In the end, the greatest gift of awakening is not special powers or extraordinary experiences. It is the ordinary miracle of connection, the knowing that there is no one else, because there has never been anyone but the one. And in that knowing, love ceases to be something you try to practice. It becomes the air you breathe, the water you swim in, the ground on which you stand, living as the music of existence, returning to presence, becoming the creator. Awakening into quantum consciousness is not a destination you arrive at once and for all. It is not a medal you wear, or a final mountain peak where you can rest forever, untouched by life. Instead, it is more like learning to dance with the flow of existence, again and again. With every step you take, awareness opens the door. But what matters is how you live through that doorway in the ordinary rhythm of your days. The truth is, life will still bring storms. Bills will still arrive in the mailbox. People will still misunderstand you. Your body will still feel tired, fragile, and human. But within all of this, there is a deeper current you can rest into. Awakening is not about escaping the storms, but about remembering the calm sky that is always present above them. The practice is simple: return to presence, again and again, no matter how many times you forget. Perfection was never the goal. The mind, shaped by years of conditioning, loves to chase ideals. I must always be peaceful, always wise, always loving. But that is just another mask, another performance. The deeper invitation is gentler: simply return. Return to this breath. Return to the silence between thoughts. Return to the knowing that you are not the storm. You are the space in which the storm appears. When you live from this space, something subtle shifts. You are no longer a passive observer, standing apart from life, nor are you merely a character tossed about by circumstances. You discover yourself as both the listener and the musician, the witness and the creator. Life is not happening to you or against you. It is happening through you. As you, this recognition is not an abstract idea, but a lived experience, woven into the small, everyday moments. Washing the dishes becomes a meditation, each movement part of a greater rhythm. Listening to a friend becomes an act of healing, for you feel the same life force speaking in both voices. Even walking through a crowded street, you sense the unity beneath all the faces, a silent thread binding each soul to the same vast field of being. And here lies the beauty: when you stop searching outside for completion, you find the wholeness that was always within you. The striving relaxes, the endless what-ifs fall quiet. You are no longer chasing life. You are letting life flow. And in that flow, creativity arises naturally. You do not force it. It pours through you like music, waiting to be played. like a song that was written long before you were born. This is why the ancients spoke of life as a kind of divine play, not because it is trivial, but because it is alive with spontaneity. You are both audience and actor, both the one who marvels at the unfolding and the one through whom the unfolding takes shape. Life is a symphony, and you are not merely listening from the back row. You are seated among the instruments, your breath and your presence shaping the notes. So as you move forward, remember, awakening is not about becoming someone new. It is about remembering what you have always been. It is about resting in the wholeness that was never lost. Even in your darkest nights, it is about trusting that the same consciousness that spins galaxies also beats gently in your chest. Live from that awareness. Return to it in moments of chaos, in moments of beauty, in the quiet in-between. Let presence be your anchor, your guide, your home. And as you do, you will see that life does not need to be conquered or perfected. It only needs to be allowed, like a melody carried on the wind. In this allowing, you discover the simple, radiant truth. You are not separate from the music. You are both the one who listens and the one who plays. And as long as you return to that presence, the song of your life will continue to unfold beautiful, imperfect, and utterly whole.